Here comes the boy. Hello, boy. Welcome. There he is. He is here.
Howdy, Ringtail friends! Today I'm going to show you how I went about sculpting my Hrothgar from Final Fantasy XIV. He is designed to look a little bit like Baxter from Baxter's Ringtail, the main game I've been working on for the past couple of years. So without further ado, let's get to it. At the moment, I am just sculpting an armature for him. I really didn't think about the fact that I should have maybe sketched the armature out onto the picture first, but it kind of just is what it is. I'm not the best at getting proportions accurate, so I did what I could. Right now you'll see here that I'm wiring around the armature, and this will kind of just help with keeping the clay and the tinfoil attached to it. That way it doesn't just kind of slide around while I'm trying to sculpt, because that can cause a lot of issues, and sometimes will even just tear up the clay completely, which is very frustrating when you're trying to do something this detailed. As you can see, I'm just kind of bulking up the main frame of the armature here. That way, I'm not going to be using a whole bunch of clay, because Sculpey is very expensive. I tried not to show you too much of me kneading the clay, because I know that's the least interesting thing that I could show. So right now I'm just going to go ahead and cover up the tinfoil. That way I have a good base to go off of. He has a lot of musculature that I'm going to have to sculpt that I've never really done before, so I wanted to make sure that I wasn't bulking him up too much at this point, because then he would just kind of look like the Incredible Hulk, and that probably would be a little bit hideous. I do a lot of finger smoothing when I'm sculpting. I know for some people they prefer to do everything by tools because fingerprints tend to be a huge issue, but I don't really like to use tools. I feel like they gouge things too much, and this is just a little bit more natural, and it sort of flows a little bit easier for me. So you'll notice that I am going to have a lot of just moments like this where I'm just kind of poking and prodding, and it can get a little bit tedious. So there are some times when I try to sort of, not show all of that, because this would be like a 17-hour long video if I did. So here I am kind of chopping off his hips because I didn't want to make him I didn't want to make that part of his anatomy, so I just decided to go a little bit farther up the torso to begin with. So I don't really know why I sculpted this much of his back, because I am going to cut most of it off later, which you will see, just to give it more of sort of a sculptural bust look to it. So here I am smoothing out his neck to kind of just, get it out of the way. I hate sculpting necks. It's frustrating. So here I am sort of just making some circles for his pecs here. And as you can see, you don't really need to be too perfect with this sort of thing. As long as you just get the general shape, it should be fine, but I do finagle with it quite a bit. That is sort of a theme of this sculpture, is just me constantly finagling everything. And here I'm going to be starting on his actual musculature, like his abs and things. Now, this is actually the second attempt at it, because the first one just was, God, absolutely hideous. And that is another thing that happened a lot during this sculpture, is just things were not working out because I've never done anything this detailed before. So I ended up cutting out a lot of video of me just screwing up and ripping clay back off of the sculpture. So there will be times where you'll see random things like this. But yeah, for musculature, it's usually pretty easy. You just kind of get some random shapes that sort of look like what muscles should be and squish them onto things. Now, a lot of people will take a lot of time to detail the musculature and smooth it onto the skin and kind of go from there. But I do sort of a cheater's method here, which you'll see in a bit, where I just kind of bulk up everything, and then throw some skin on it, pretty much. And that is a pretty quick way to get automatic muscular detail. Now, I do kind of screw it up here a little bit with my tool by making the lines a little bit too pronounced. So after smoothing in the pecs, kind of mulling it over for a little bit of time, I realized it looked like crap. So once again, I sort of just did some things off camera, and I do apologize about that. I know that's not the most exciting thing to watch. And as you can see, I've kind of fixed up the muscles and added him a belly button. And this is the part where I cut his back off, which I gotta say, I felt like I should probably go to jail for that. It was a little bit on the violent side. So now that I'm pretty happy with the musculature, I need to make a base, and no face reveal yet. So now that the base is done, I gotta drill it together. This is basically going to be a stand where I can keep the sculpture and keep it from moving around while I'm sculpting. And now it's time for the first bake. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish this up here. I'm gonna throw my little cookie in the oven and, dash some spices on here for that extra good flavor. Please ignore the fact that I have a bunch of food all over my oven. I was not thinking. And now I'm going to kind of jump around a little bit here. So now that he's done baking and I've got some hot glue on the base, I'm going to pop him in here, and now he won't slide around while I'm working with him. A lot of muscles are literally just random chunks of ball that get thrown on all over the place and then kind of smoothed out. So as you can see, I'm just going to kind of smush a couple of balls on here, as well as some wormy dealies, as North of the Border would call it. You should check his channel out, by the way. So yeah, that's basically it. I'm just going to kind of rough out the musculature of his arms, his pecs, all that good stuff, and I'm going to smooth it out a little bit here. Nice thing about Super Sculpey is it actually sticks to itself even once baked. So you can always add, but you can never subtract. So I just kind of want to mention that I do finagle a lot when I sculpt. And if you decide you want to get into something like this, don't feel bad about doing that. If it doesn't look perfect, take the time to just continue redoing it. As you can see, I'm just adding layer after layer because the initial layer that I put was nowhere near big enough and not round enough. And he kind of looked emaciated. So again, just take your time. If something looks wrong, finagle it until it looks right, at the risk of possibly messing it up, but you'll never know unless you try. Okay, so he's looking good. I've got all of his muscles done. Gotta clip these and make sure they don't shoot into my eyeball. And then I'm going to go ahead and close off the little hole where the armature came out. That way it doesn't look hideous by the time it's done. And I'm going to go ahead and flatten it out to give it kind of the same carved look that his back has. And then the bottoms are going to be painted black here in the future on the second video. Alrighty. So he's looking really good, and oh no, I made his head off screen. I do apologize. I literally smashed the head about 15 times because I hated what I was doing. This is the first time I've sculpted an animal face, so it is what it is. And now at this point, I'm going to go ahead and make the fur that goes on his arms, chest, and back. And this is my second attempt at this. The first one was really bad. So as you can see, I'm kind of smoothing it out to give it that laid down fur look. And I'm going to test fit it. Does not look very good, so I just do a quick little trim here. There we go, it fits over his large noggin. I'm going to go ahead and smooth it out a little bit to, again, kind of give it like a matted fur look. At this point in the sculpture, he's looking really funny. I think his fur makes him look sort of like Nightwing from Batman. And for some reason, his bald head reminds me of Charles Xavier from the old X-Men movies. So again, I'm going to just go ahead and continue doing some smoothing out. I did cut a little bit of the video just to save you guys the stress of having to watch me finagle for an hour. So right now I'm just kind of pushing things along to sort of smooth it against his skin, and that will help give it a more furry appearance once I actually start getting the good detail done here. I used to use needle tools for this kind of detail, and I always gouged things and it ended up looking bad. So I did find this nice little wire carving tool thingy. Seems to work really well for this. So this is a pretty tedious but sort of relaxing process, but as you can see, it's already giving so much depth and detail, just kind of messing around with this. And that detail will all be picked up quite a bit more when I do some dry brushing during the painting video. I do apologize if there's any background noise. My heater decided to kick on because it is super cold here. So bear with me. I try to make some music go in the background to not be too frustrating. As you can see, everything kind of pills up a little bit while you're sculpting, so if you use some rubbing alcohol in a paintbrush, it will sort of smooth things out, and there won't be all those little like balls of clay sitting all over the place. I'm going to go ahead and hit it with a wire brush to give it a little bit more furry, hairy texture, and then some more alcohol to smooth it all out. Alright, now I'm going in for oh, where's he at? Oh, there he is. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and throw this bad boy back in the oven, and while he is baking, we're going to work on the base. So this will be the final base. This is a random plastic lid. I don't know where it came from. I'm going to go ahead and fill it with rocks and some hot glue. That way the sculpture has a nice sturdy base that won't slide around. Now here I'm using a wood burning tool to just kind of carve some bricks into it. I don't know why, but for some reason the whole time I was making this sculpture, I was thinking of Corthus and the whole Dragoon area and all of that good stuff, so I just went with some plain bricks. Adding a little bit of extra brick detail, and then I want to smooth it out because bricks that are weathered don't have such perfect lines. I'm going to kind of add some weathering on this side here as well, just using the wood burner. Also, please, if you're going to use a wood burner on plastic, use a respirator or do it in a well-ventilated area. This stuff can be pretty rough. I'm going to go ahead and hit it with an X-Acto knife and get some chips out of it to make it look like these bricks have been here a while. And sand it all down. I'm going to drill a hole for the armature to sit in, that way I can secure him to the base here later. And as you can see, it's working out pretty well. So I wasn't really sure what to do with this part of the sculpture. I kind of thought about maybe doing a tree, maybe like an energy swirl or something, but I decided to just go with a nondescript, tornado-y black thing. I don't know what it is, but in the final product it looks pretty good, and it kind of gives that old-timey, like, Roman sculpture bust vibe, which I really like. So I throw some texture on it here just to make it a little bit more interesting than just a big symbiote from Spider-Man looking thing, and then smooth it out with some more alcohol. This process happens a lot. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and remove it from the base. I was very stressed out, but luckily nothing tore, and then I just kind of fixed up the little edges here. And off camera added fur to his arms. Alright, so this is Cos Clay, which is a really cool rubberized clay, and off camera I actually built his ears with it, and they are still flexible. So right now I'm doing his little soul patch chin strap thingy that the Hrothgars have, and I was really nervous about this part because even though this is a rubberized clay, it can still snap, which you'll see happens actually later. Get his little sideburns on here. Trying to keep them thin, that way they don't like bulk up because he doesn't have a thick beard in the game. I'm just adding on his little goatee sections here. For some reason it always reminds me of Iron Man when I have to work on beards and things that don't look normal. Once I have a very general shape done, I'm going to go ahead and start the hair texturing. And I want to sort of keep all of my strokes in the same direction. That way it looks like the hair is actually growing out of his face instead of just being randomly stuck on there. Do a little bit of finagling here, and it actually went on for about 7 minutes, so I did cut part of this. I do apologize about the wonky camera view. So my Hrothgar has sort of like a man bun situation going on in the back here. And unfortunately, I could not keep my camera focused, so I did cut a little bit of the footage in the next couple of sections here. Add a little bit more texture to make it look like his ears are popping out of the fur. Or the head hair, sorry. Alrighty. So I initially tried to do this in a weird, like, cut off triangle sort of thing, and it just was looking super awful. So I decided to go and do some actual sculpting here, and then I'm going to individually put each like strand of hair here. In game, this hair sticks up off of his neck a little funny, so I tried to lay it down a little bit more naturally like hair does. Because it realistically makes no sense in the game. Adding his little sideburn dealies here. For this section, I am really bad at keeping my hands in front of the camera, so I do apologize. It definitely causes the camera to fall out of focus a lot. So yeah, sorry about this terrible editing that I did here, but I wanted to include as much footage of this part as I could, because I'm very proud of the way his hair turned out. Alright, now I'm just kind of finishing up the back section of his hair here, and then I'm going to have to do a big braid along the back to kind of hide some of these ugly seams. So I tried to braid about 17 different times. I'm not very good at this sort of thing, so I do the best that I can. I give it some detailing here to make it look like his hair is actually pulled back from his face into a braid. And then I struggle for a little bit here to make it stand out. And then I really struggle with this part to get it to actually look like a braid. Just braiding the clay looked really doofy, so this is the best I could do. And I kind of only show you one side because I struggled with the other side of his head really bad, so I'm just going to show you the main detailing here. Sort of round it out to look a little bit more like the bulbous sections of a braid, and then trim it down a little bit. Alright, now time for his man bun, because he is a distinguished Hrothgar. And he only drinks organic coffee. Alright, now for his super awesome greaser hair. I'm throwing his bouffant up on here, and this was something I was really nervous about, and I'm not quite sure why. I did have to try it about 10 different times to get it to look right, but with a little bit of finesse and finagling, I got it to look pretty awesome in my opinion. Now, unfortunately, my hands were in the way a lot, and the camera did just do its own thing this whole time. So there are some sections that I did have to kind of cut out because it was honestly nauseating to watch. Also, if you noticed, I accidentally broke his teeth off, so I will have to give him some dentistry here later on. Now I throw on his top braid, and he's just about done here. And as you can see, again, I'm struggling with the braid detail. And now it is on to finalizing the look of the top of his hair. I did throw in a couple extra little pieces at the end here that I did not get footage of. I go over the braid details again just to make them stand out a little bit better because I did flatten them a little while I was sculpting the rest of his hair. Now I've got to put his big old mutton chops on here. And this part I finagled with quite a bit, but I think they turned out pretty accurate to what he looks like in game. Now, he has these little clasps on his braids, or bands. I'm not quite sure what they are. I was pretty happy with the way they turned out, but I do screw them up a little bit later on, but that's okay, because they still look good. And I was pretty happy with the little diamond details that are embossed into them. Alrighty, he's all baked up, his hair is all finished, and I think he's looking pretty fantastic. This clay again is rubberized, so his hair won't snap off. And now it's on to what is probably the worst part of this entire sculpture. Not because it looks bad, but because I hated my life. I had already sculpted his entire outfit once with the original rubberized clay, and for some reason when I baked it, it did not get hot enough, and as I tried to remove it from his body, it exploded. So here I am trying it with a new rubberized clay. This is from Sculpey. It's more of it's like a clay for children. So it's not known for taking detail well, and it is extremely gummy. I felt like I was working with a sculpture covered in Big League Chew. It was honestly terrible, but in the long run, it turned out pretty good. Here I am adding the creases where his clothes kind of fold up. I didn't do the best job, and a lot of sculptors will use little worms of clay and sort of smooth them out, but I find it a lot easier to just kind of use a sculpting tool. I might practice that a little bit later, but I think I did a pretty decent job with what I had going. Alrighty, now that that's done, I'm going to kind of smooth some things out here, just sort of refine the look, because right now he's kind of smudgy. That was something I didn't expect, but this clay again is very soft, so everything just kind of blobs together a little bit. Once I get it all smoothed out and kind of trim some of the excess, I make a couple more little folds in the fabric just to make it look a little more realistic. And I use my little shaping tool here to make the nice creases where the sleeve are, and then I'm starting to make the seams, which are very pronounced in game, with this little wire tool. Now his shirt has these weird front seams on the sleeves. So before I get to those, I do make his little sleevey cuffs, because he, again, is a distinguished Hrothgar. And I smooth them out to give them more of a tucked-in shirt look. So here's these weird little seams here. I don't know why they're on the side of the sleeve, but I'm really proud of being able to quickly freehand these. Making sure to keep my wire tool covered in rubbing alcohol to reduce surface drag and to not leave so many little pebbles all over the clay. Okay, now it's time for his... Ooh, I don't know what you'd call that. It's like a flap in the front of his shirt that keeps it together, where all the buttons are. I have to finagle the shape a little bit, which is fine, but I think it turned out pretty darn good. I smooth it out on the seams here, that way it doesn't look quite so much like it's just kind of stuck on. Now I mark where my seams need to be. Again, covering my tool with rubbing alcohol to make sure it goes smooth. And then I smooth it out, fix it up a little bit, and throw some stitching on there. And I think it looks great. Now I'm going to push in on it with a pin to kind of get an idea of where the buttons need to be glued onto. In hindsight, I would not have done this. And then I texture it with a little bit of canvas to give it a natural clothy look. And then I hit it with some rubbing alcohol to smooth out some of the rougher edges, and it is into the oven. And it's a different color because that clay also did not get hot enough and also crumbled to pieces. So you can probably see here, as I'm cutting things and trying to get it removed from the actual sculpture, my hands are shaking incredibly bad. My nervousness was through the roof. So I get all the tin foil out, and here we are. It comes right off, and it is very flexible. So now it's time to get started on his collar here. This was actually probably the quickest part of this entire sculpture. I did it in basically one go with just a couple alterations here. I knew that the back of the sculpture wasn't really something that was going to be viewed a lot, so I'm not too worried about some of the rougher edges. And then I textured the collar with a scrubbing pad. So I smooth around the edges to give it sort of a tapered look, which also kind of adds to the fuzzy look later on. After trimming some things down, I do need to make a collar on the back here to sort of help it stand up, because it is sort of popped in the game. This part of the sculpture is not really meant to be viewed when the clothes are on, so I didn't really care how good it looked, but I did end up painting it the same color of the shirt to kind of blend it in just a little bit. The color does need to be removable, so it's okay that it's a little janky back there. Awesome, so yeah, you can see I definitely broke his beard and had to fix it. And now I'm trying on the collar and the jacket after they're baked, and everything works great. So now I'm going to go ahead and get started on his little scarf here. I had to make this scarf about 15 times because his beard just continuously decided to destroy everything I was doing. But this is my final attempt, and I finally got it. I learned from my mistakes, and I do the little worm here. Then I give it some clothy look to it. And now I put this little bunch here. It's not really meant to be viewed, but it is going to hold up the rest of the scarf. My other attempts kept falling down into the collar and getting destroyed. It was a lot. As you can see, I'm kind of just folding it to make it look like some natural cloth. I did use the texture from my little silicone mat there to give it a cloth look as well. Then I sort of smooth everything in, and with my hands and my tool here, I will give it more of a folded cloth look. Awesome. And now one final little trim here to get the length correct. Awesome. Alrighty, so this is a little emblem on his collar. I don't really know what it's supposed to be in game. I never quite did the quests where you get these jackets, so I'm just kind of tracing it onto some clay and then quickly cutting it out with a sharp X-Acto knife. It does have a bevel to it, so I'm using the popsicle stick and my X-Acto knife to get that done. Then I hit it with my wire tool to make the details stand out and smooth it out a little bit, and then it is done. So this is a hot glue mold that I made of the buttons that I had sculpted. And this is the button. And now I'm going to use some UV resin. This stuff is really cool. Basically, it cures with UV light. So any sort of clear-ish mold works well, whether it be silicone or hot glue. You just throw it under the light for a little while. And once it's done curing, you can pop it out easily and quickly create multiple buttons. It is a little rough, so I do need to trim it a little bit. And then I do end up sanding the bottom so that it'll fit a little bit better onto the shirt itself. And I continue putting them onto this popsicle stick for painting later. I did make his belt off camera because it was finely detailed and it was stressing me out. I also made the two buckles. One of them is also made out of the UV resin. Had I recorded the sculpting of these belts, I probably would have lost my mind because getting camera angles is an absolute nightmare, and it's not something I'm used to, and I'm recording it with a cell phone. Alright, and after getting these glued on, it's time to check and see what the full sculpture looks like. Alright, so let's throw him on the base, pop these clothes on, the collar and his little scarf are done. And I'm going to see what it looks like with the little emblem on there. And I think it looks great. That was the whole process of the sculpture itself. There's a couple things I would have liked to have changed or done better, but all in all, I'm pretty proud. What do you guys think? Keep an eye out for the next video where I show you the painting process.